Hey everybody, it's Helen Hillix, your host for From My Heart to Yours and my YouTube channel, Helen Hillix. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, intuitive counselor, and I've been doing this work for 35 years. And I want to talk to you today about dating. And the title of this show is The Only Dating Advice You Need is to Be Real. So I know that sounds incredibly simplistic, and we're going to dive into what it really means and what the challenges are, how you can do that, and what mainstream dating coaches and dating advice tell you that's contrary to what I'm saying. So one of the things that I have noticed over my many years of counseling is that people come to me with all kinds of dating woes, and especially right now during COVID-19. I know you know lots and lots of people who had just started dating a person or who want to be dating somebody, and they're saying, oh, but it's not the same online, and you can't tell about the chemistry, and how am I going to know if I really like the person, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm here to tell you that COVID-19 quarantine lockdown period, social distancing is the perfect time to be dating. And I'll tell you why. One of the reasons is because it gives you even more of an opportunity to be real. You have to be aware of what you're putting out there. And when you're doing it on Zoom, you really get the chance to take a look at whether you're presenting yourself as real or not real, instead of just dolling up and going out and meeting somebody in some sexy outfit. And then that's all you notice is whether you have chemistry or not. So to me, this COVID opportunity is absolute perfection for real, authentic dating and getting to know somebody, because you don't get to just rely on chemistry. You have to rely on actually being yourself and having conversations, and you get to be real, be vulnerable. So let's dive into the steps. Okay, the first one is being real. And let's very simply put, in your profile, don't say that you're slightly overweight if you weigh 350 pounds. I had this experience when I was online dating. This was a number of years ago. But one guy told me that he was slightly overweight in the profile. And when I met him, he probably weighed 400 pounds. And it's like, I try not to be fat shaming because I've been fat, but it was a shock. It wasn't something I was prepared for. And it made me feel, again, it made me feel tricked. It made me feel lied to. And then I remember another guy who said, when he met me, he said, wow, you actually look like your picture. And I thought, that is so odd. But he said that he had had the experience many times of a woman would post a photograph of herself like 20 years earlier, and she didn't look anything like that photograph now. And I just think, how in the world can people think that they're going to start a healthy, long-lasting, potentially, relationship with a picture that's from 20 years ago? And then when the person meets you, they immediately feel like you've lied to them. So be real from the photograph that you present to your profile. And this is very tricky about the profile. I'm going to dive into that more in some other steps. But I want to just say it for step one is be real in your profile. I see people all the time on social media that have doctors' outfits on or military outfits on. It's all the time I get requests from men to connect to me. And they're always doctors or admirals or, generals or something. When I know it's a lie, I know it's not even true, besides the fact that I'm happily married and I delete them anyway. But it's so common nowadays to manufacture what you think people want from you. And I just want to say, step 1 is be real. Step 2, 3, 4, 5, and 20 are be real also. But step 1 is be real. Because if you want a real relationship, it has to start off by you being real. Step 2 is be vulnerable. Now, you may think it's the same thing, but it isn't. You know, being vulnerable is because you can be real and say, this is where I live, this is what I do for a job, this is a current photograph. All that is real. But step 2 is be vulnerable, because I am challenging you to take a second step, a second look at what it is that you're sharing. If you are sharing only things that you think will be liked or will appeal to the greatest number of, applicants or people looking at your profile, then you're not being vulnerable. I remember when I was online dating, at one point, I was totally accentuating all the things that I thought men would like, that I owned a boat, that I loved to be out in nature, that I was completely self-supporting, owned a nice home of my own, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting because I was doing one thing that I commonly did is make myself look indispensable, make myself look like I didn't need anything from you, but you could lean on me. Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I was not making myself vulnerable. I was not saying I really want a partner who's going to be equally devoted to me and wants sacred sexuality and intimacy. So be vulnerable, risk saying what you really want. Now, maybe I got these in the wrong order, because, number 3 is get clear. In order to get vulnerable, you really have to get clear. But sometimes by being vulnerable and risking saying things, you do get clear. You get more and more clear about what it is that's truly important to you. Again, I have a client whose profile said, all kinds of recreational things. And this list was like a must-have list, believing that if you have things in common, you're going to have a strong relationship. So she was accentuating, the ski club and the golf membership and the traveling and, the wine tasting and all of those things, and her career accomplishments. And it was, again, all the things that she thought at the moment were going to be important in a relationship. But ultimately, she ended up with someone who didn't check any of those boxes. But he had other attributes that she realized were way more important to her. And she never would have met him if she hadn't changed her profile by getting clear about what really was her heart's desire, what really were the qualities in a person that she valued the most. And this is quite a challenge, this step number 3, to get clear. Quite a challenge, because our society tells you, for instance, if you're a man looking for a woman, society tells you she should be younger, she should be beautiful, she should have a great figure, and on and on and on. She should be financially self-supporting. She should want to support you and your dreams. I don't even know what all of the fantasies are about what she ought to be like. And for a woman to a man, it's like, he should be a good provider. It doesn't matter if he's handsome or if fit, very much a double standard, but, or definitely not younger. He can be as old as he wants to be, as long as he's got money and, can support you in the lifestyle that you want to become accustomed. Now, I'm not saying this is absolutely the way it is for everybody, but I want to challenge you to really get clear about what matters. And I want you to look over your must-have list. Some people say, oh, I would never date somebody that has a child. I mean, is that really true? Is that really that important to you, that you don't want to share somebody with a child? Or would it depend on the person? In which case you don't really need to mention it. And if you fall in love with someone who has a child, so be it. Then you appreciate that the universe sent you somebody that has a child and that you get to have that experience. I mean, that's what happened to me with my husband right now. Is I didn't put that down because I really didn't care if they had a child or they didn't. And even though he was 60 when we met, he had a 10-year-old son that I ended up then getting to help finish raising. And that was a lovely experience. But if I had said, oh, I'm too old, I'm 57, I don't want anybody with children, then I would have eliminated my husband. So it's like, check your must-have and can't possibly have checklists, and see if they really are about qualities of a person, or if they're about, superficial things. They have to be 6 feet tall or whatever it is. Really take a look and get clear about what is important to you. And this goes to number 4, which is the combination of don't settle. Don't do the opposite of get clear, which is, oh, but I know I said that I really wanted someone who's spiritual, but this guy's so hot, he's so cute. It's like, don't settle for something that doesn't really matter to you by being swayed by impulses. So check your motives. What's your motive for changing your must-have lists, or your can't possibly tolerate list? If you are a sober person and, you see a very handsome guy or a beautiful woman and they say they drink, I think it's pretty slippery for you to say, oh, but they're, again, so hot or so cute or handsome or whatever. And maybe it wouldn't bother me that they drink. It's like sometimes people are willing to risk the most important things like their sobriety just because they think somebody is hot. And that, I don't know, that is never going to lead you where you want to go, because being in a happy, healthy relationship is challenging enough. It really has to be based on legitimate, authentic connections. And those, you have to spend time to understand what your legitimate, authentic qualities and characteristics are that are going to support the kind of relationship that you want, not that your friends want. And this is another, I should have made this a whole other step. I'll just throw it in here, as part of this step, is don't let other people influence you that don't know any more about the topic than you do. I'm not saying don't get support, but I'm saying don't let people influence you who don't know any more about it than you do. And you have to listen to your intuition, because I'll give you a few examples here. One of the women that I'm working with was dating. She's coming out of a long-term, very unhappy marriage, and she dived right into the dating, world, and she was desperate to feel wanted. And she got hooked up with this guy that I think he was a little younger than she was, but he's very busy, has a whole bunch of stuff, different endeavors going on, and he was never available. It would be like 2 weeks they wouldn't see each other, and he wouldn't contact her for days or weeks on end. And then he would come over and they'd have sex and they'd have great talks, and then he would disappear again. And people would say to her, a dating coach said to her, well, you have to examine, why are you needy? Really look at your neediness. And I just said, that is complete BS. This guy is unavailable. He doesn't treat you like he cares about you. And you need to confront him and tell him, what it is that you need in order to stay in this relationship, if you even want to call it a relationship. And she did that. And of course, he wasn't her guy. They weren't meant to be together. He just disappeared after that. So when you talk about settling, don't settle for something that really is something that you obviously know does not meet your needs. And on the other end of the spectrum, don't be so clingy to your must-have list that you won't consider someone that might be your actual, I don't know, twin flame, soulmate, great partner, whatever, however you want to articulate that. Just because they're, 2 years out of your age range, or they make, $20,000 less than you think they should, or they don't ski, or whatever it is, or they have children, you have to let yourself realize what is the most important to you. And nobody's going to be perfect. Trust me, nobody's going to be perfect. But there are things like somebody who doesn't treat you as if you matter. That's not to be tolerated, and don't ever settle for that. So, that's one example of what not to settle for. Another one, a young client I'm working with, was kind of, dating, flirting, whatever, on social media with a guy. And he would come in and say he really liked her and he really wanted to get to know her and meet her and blah, blah, blah. And then he would disappear. And this to me is like the biggest red flag there is somebody who disappears. So I want you to pay attention to that and don't excuse that. If they disappear when you confront them about something, or they disappear just because they disappear, that is something to really, really pay attention to, because if they do it now, they're going to do it later in one way or another. You cannot have a healthy relationship based on a foundation where one person disappears and doesn't treat you as if you're precious. That is not going to work. So then, now let's just say that you have been real, you've been authentic, you have been vulnerable, you have decided that you're going to say what is so, that you're going to just put it out there. This time around, you're going to just put it out there. So you've done that. You've put it out there. You've been vulnerable. You've been authentic. And you've decided what is really important to you. And so now you have a date or whatever it is on Zoom, and you begin the process now of actually being in a relationship with the person. And I don't care if that relationship lasts one Zoom date. That is a relationship, and it's an opportunity for you to practice continuing to be authentic and saying, what you're noticing about yourself and what you're noticing about them. And I want to back up a minute, because I think what generally happens is people say, well, don't talk about this and don't talk about that. Again, this has been happening in my office and now on Zoom for many, many years. People come in and say, well, I've met this new guy. Well, does he know you're a recovering alcoholic? Well, no, I wasn't going to tell him that until, a couple of months down the road. Or, does he know you have herpes? Oh, no. I was going to wait and tell him that later on down the road. Or does he know you have kids? No, I didn't mention that. It's like, well, when are you going to mention these things that are either going to make or break your relationship? If the person loves to go out and party and you're a recovering alcoholic, and it doesn't support you to be anywhere around that, and you don't talk about that and how to handle that, that's an invitation for trouble. I've had clients who had some sort of a sexual, either they couldn't have sex because of a physical condition, or they didn't like to have a certain kind of sex. And it's, again, didn't want to talk about that until farther down the road. And yet, what in the world is going to happen when you do tell the person. I recently had a client who met a guy that she really, really liked, and they'd been very open and authentic. And I asked her, have you told him you're bipolar? She was very well managed, a professional. It was not a problem. And, she said, no, my psychiatrist told me to not tell him for at least 2 months. And all my friends are telling me that too. And I just said, no, you get to tell him now. If he's your guy, he will handle that. He will handle that. And I say the same thing to these other people about not saying that they're an alcoholic or that they have herpes or that they don't like to have oral sex or whatever it is. I've told all of them, no, you get to tell them right away. If you think you're interested, you get to tell them that. And I remember talking to my husband. I don't remember whether it was, I know it wasn't our first conversation, but we ended up talking about sex in one of our early conversations. And, I said, so what do you like? And I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like. And it's like, it's just like talking about where we're going to go to dinner. You just tell them whatever you know about yourself, you share it. And in that way, you are practicing authenticity in your relationship. You're setting a standard. You're setting a standard right away to talk about your relationship. My husband told me early on in our connection that he had been addicted to pornography. And I so appreciated that. And we struggled with that early on, but I knew about it. He didn't try to fool me and have me find out surprisingly about that later. So it's like, don't think that you can hide who you are from that person. The truth will come out. And what do you think it says to that person when they find out the truth and you have been being seductive and maybe even had sex with them already and, been intimate in so many different ways. And then they find out something like you have herpes or you have a child or you're a recovering alcoholic or you're bipolar or whatever it is, or you're addicted to pornography. What do you think that person is going to feel like? They're going to feel like they've been tricked and exposed, and they're going to feel unsafe with you. They're not going to trust you. And how in the world do you think you're going to build a healthy relationship out of the beginning that isn't authentic? So I'm not going to go into the fifth step. We did talk about a little bit. When you meet, then the real work begins. That's really all I'm going to say is then the real work begins. Then you get to realize how reactive you are, and you get to work on that and talk about that. And you get to realize how your traumas are being triggered, and then you get to talk about that. You get to notice whatever it is you notice. Let's say one of my clients, her new man told her that his past girlfriend had complained about how much time he spent with his daughters. And, after the very first night they spent together, he was very busy with his daughters the whole rest of the weekend when she had the expectation that they were going to spend more time together. So she had to risk talking about that with him, even though he had already kind of laid the groundwork of this is not something that's going to be easy to deal with because somebody else has complained about it and it didn't change. It was one of the reasons we broke up. So it's tricky, guys. It's tricky and it's scary, and you don't know if you're saying the right thing sometimes. Of course, this is all reasons to get a really reliable coach, beside you, guiding you. And I do not mean the kind of coach that says, don't act clingy. Don't ever call him first. Let him chase you, and don't act needy. And, always look a certain way when you go out. And, here is something that you could say to him that's going to make him feel really good about himself. And it's like all this strategizing and manipulating and inauthentic, steps to try to get that person to like you, even if they're not the right person for you. And that's the thing that I keep going back to, is if this person is meant for you, then nothing you can say will drive them away. And if they're not meant for you, I don't care how hard you strategize, seduce, and manipulate, it will not work out because they were not meant to be your person. So I hope that this has been helpful. I would love to hear more from you. Any questions you have about the topic, I'm happy to answer. And I hope to hear from every single listener and viewer. And I love you, and I will talk to you next week.